Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi, we welcome you to a podcast on stage with enterprise thought leaders. My name is Nicko van Someren and I'm the managing editor of OnDot India's 6 B2B enterprise technology platforms. We are engaging in conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, which reach over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. Cyber risks are increasingly evolving and becoming a bigger threat to enterprises as newer innovations arrive. It seems to be playing a very critical role, both as a thought and a tool with cyber risk. Today we have with us Nicko van Someren. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Absolute Security to discuss this paradigm. Welcome to the show, Nicko. It's great to have you here with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure with Dalias. I will have a short introduction to Nicko, but I'll invite him to add something about himself if I miss it out. Nicko identifies as a technologist, entrepreneur, and communicator with more than 2 decades of experience as a CTO from startup through IPO to a mature company. He has created numerous disruptive technologies in fields as diverse as security, hardware, networking, computer vision, and biofeedback. He is also the co-founder of 2 successful startup technology companies with IPO exits, Encipher PLC and Ant Limited. He is an evangelist of technologies and architectures to customers, business partners, regulators, and government security organizations. Is there anything I have missed out, Nicko? You're welcome to add to it for the benefit of our audiences.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Though I guess the only other relevant thing for this particular conversation is that, although people think that AI is a very modern innovation, my PhD is actually in machine learning, this actually goes back quite a long way.
Right, and I keep repeating that, but for some reason, I don't know why, maybe because it is gathering so much of human interaction capabilities now that it's become so popular. But in terms of enterprise, I think it's been there for a long time, at least 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Or longer, yes.
Much longer. So in the academic circles, it has been around longer. But in terms of use for security or as a tool for marketing or an enterprise, I think it's a little more recent, which is why I think a big hype.
It's definitely reaching the top of the wave in the hype cycle. People have been using various aspects of artificial intelligence for all sorts of areas of security for quite a long time. But I think what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years is really around the rise of natural language understanding with large language models. And that, I think, has made artificial intelligence a lot more accessible, even if the underlying technology has been around for a while.
Correct, and I think the rise of social media has made it much worse with OpenAI and all the chat GPTs and the Groks of the world. Lots of things are happening which are putting AI right in the limelight. So I think one of the big reasons. So our first question is, according to a research by Absolute Security, 54% of all CISOs feel that their organization security team is unprepared for evolving AI-powered threats. How are they handling something they don't feel prepared for? I know it's kind of candid, but your views, please.
I think that, almost always CISOs are unprepared for the next new threat. But I think the advantage we do have this time round is that we're sort of seeing the threat coming. New sorts of threats come along on a fairly regular basis. I think that people are seeing artificial intelligence not so much as a new threat individually, but as a platform for developing new threats and a tool for delivering new threats. And so it's a bit of a force multiplier. We are starting to see examples of attackers making use of large language models and the technology that they enable in the space of deep fakes to carry out much more effective phishing attacks, much more effective social engineering attacks, and much more scalable versions of those. We've long known that spear phishing, the very targeted phishing attacks, are more effective. but they're more costly for attackers. With language models and other sorts of artificial intelligence, we can do those sorts of targeted attacks in a much more effective and scalable way. But I think that, as with any force multiplier, as with any new tool, we've also got a tool here that can be used for the side of good as well as the side of evil. So I think that, yes, we've sort of had a bit of a heads up that, here is a bunch of new technology coming along, which is going to enable more scalable, more effective attacks from the bad guys. And I think CISOs are trying to work out how to best leverage these same technologies to combat those threats. And a lot of vendors, including ourselves, are making use of these same sorts of AI technologies to better detect the incoming threats, better respond more rapidly to those incoming, and also to sort of filter through the noise to get to the signal to work out which are threats and which are not threats. So I think CISOs are scrambling to catch up, but unlike the next 0 day that comes along, we've had a bit more heads up to this one. So we're probably a bit more aware that it's coming and perhaps a little bit prepared, even though 53% of the CISOs we surveyed felt that they were somewhat unprepared.
So that is the second question as well. What should they do to be best prepared? Are there new policies required? Do you think newer tools would be required? How do you think
I think we're going to need new tools. I mean, with every new threat, we do need to find new tools to, the whole security industry for decades has, been a sort of constant cat and mouse game where, on the one hand, we've got, attackers getting ahead. They come up with a new way of attacking, a new set of techniques, and then we have to build new tools to combat those techniques. And then they find a way around those new tools, and so we go back and forth. I think that AI, as I say, is a force multiplier for both sides, and so I think in the medium term, we will see more and more vendors like Absolute coming up with ways of making use of artificial intelligence to combat these threats. I think in the short term, CISOs probably need to spend a lot of time understanding what AI can and what AI can't achieve. AI, there's actually relatively little evidence to suggest that these AI tools are creating new attack techniques. There have been some demonstrations of taking vulnerability disclosures and turning them into attacks, but those are not very effective. What we are seeing is probably more emphasis on using AI as a way of doing better social engineering, better phishing, better language models are very good at. A lot of people have said that these LLMs are very good at producing very convincing bullshit, I think, excuse my term of phrase, but the fact is that that is exactly what social engineers and phishers do, is that they try and convince you of something, even though it's false. And LLMs are actually quite good at that. But we also know that by far the most effective tools for combating social engineering attacks and phishing attacks is just good education and good awareness programs. And I do think that language models can give us some filtering, but they can also provide tools which give us more sophisticated training programs for these. So I think that we're going to see, again, this cat and mouse game playing out. And CISOs can wait for the vendors to do this. We're working on it hard, but they can also educate themselves about what these tools can and can't do right now in order to try and stay ahead.
So as AI plays an increasingly important role even for cyber risks or cybersecurity, do you think CISOs will need to go beyond just being the custodians of a cyber risk and ensuring that companies are safe? They also need to understand a lot more about the new technologies and the way they're evolving. They also need to understand how LLMs are being used either ways as attack factors or?
Yes, I mean, I think that all good CISOs educate themselves not just on the protection tools and the mechanics of protecting an organization, but on the whole technology sector and all of the things that might impact them. There's a lot more complexity to being a CISO than setting up a firewall and hoping. There's a, and the more you understand about what the threats are, what you're protecting against, and how those threats have evolved over time, the better educated you are as a CISO about the technology, the more capable you are of responding quickly as things come along. So I think that CISOs need to make sure that, just like every other person in the technology sector, and pretty much every other sector too, they need to be educating themselves on what AI is and what it isn't, and what it can and can't do. We all have to do that today because it's rapidly evolving, but it's clear that it's going to have a very big impact across almost all sectors.
So that is about artificial intelligence. I'm sure there are other technologies that are also evolving, and CISOs have to keep pace with them. So as a vendor, Absolute comes through the complex security needs and demands of all organizations to provide tools that help to self-heal endpoint agent failures. The evolving AI environment would place challenges in this path too, when it comes to other tools and technology. So how do you cope with the dynamic nature of this threat enhancer?
So, I mean, one of the things that we premise our product lines on is that I think if you look at the way that the information security space has matured over the last couple of decades, we spent a lot of time seeing a new threat and building a new protection against that threat, and hoping that that protection is going to block all of those incoming threats of that type. And then we just wait for the next type of new threat. We build a new product. And this is very much of a cat and mouse game, as I mentioned. And I think that for a long time, there's been a bit of an attitude that saying we're going to concentrate on spending time and effort on how we will recover from these attacks is a bit defeatist. It's about, saying that the attacks might succeed is considered a bit, like you're a failure. You're admitting that you can't do anything about this. In practice, though, when we look at the statistics, even companies that spend a lot of time and effort on protection still get some sort of breach. And so our premise is that, yes, you absolutely need to make sure that you have a lot of important tools deployed to protect against these attacks. And you need to make sure that those tools are not just deployed, but actually working correctly. So you've got to be able to monitor whether they're working correctly. But then you also have to admit that they will not be 100% effective. And so there is a significant probability that you will eventually have a successful attack. So then you have to think about, how do I minimize the impact of a given attack? When we look at the systemic risk, we've got, what is the probability of the attack? What is the probability? What is the scale of the impact? And then how long does it take me to recover? If I'm in an organization like many, which bill by the hour, whether I'm an accountant or a lawyer or any other organization that's going to bill, time is money. And the longer my machines are not functioning correctly, the more money it loses my company. So from a risk point of view, yes, I can try and reduce the probability of an attack. Yes, I can try and reduce the sideways spread within my organization of an attack. But I also have to think about, how long does it take me to recover from that attack? And if I can bring that metric down, then I bring down the cost to my organization of an attack. And so we think about not just how do we make sure all of your tools are correctly installed and correctly functioning, but how can we speed up that recovery if you've got a remote worker who has a systemic malware infection, and what they really need is their machine to be completely reimaged and restored to a known good state, then we have a couple of options. We might put it in a box, give it to FedEx or DHL, and have it sent across to IT, and they'll fix it and they'll ship it back. And 4 days later, that person will be up and running. But if I have a tool installed where I can press a button to reimage that remotely, and it takes about the time it takes for you to go and get lunch, then maybe they're down for half an hour, and then they're back up and running after lunch, and they can start billing again, they can start generating revenue again. So we believe that a key component to reducing the systemic risk to organizations is having effective tooling to be able to do that sort of recovery remotely and at scale. And by doing that, we are not being defeatist. We're not just throwing our hands up and saying, yes, we can't protect against these attacks. We still want to protect against those attacks. We still want to make sure that all of your security controls are installed and running correctly and be able to give you that sort of compliance reporting. But in the event, which is unfortunately quite likely, that some of those controls eventually fail for some of your users, we also want to be able to bring them back to a known good state as quickly as possible so that they can start generating revenue for your business again.
And a large part of these attacks is also the kind of probably data and then compliance risk or reputation risk, and that just adds up in terms of dollars.
It does, yes. I mean, we certainly need to make sure that in the event that an attack happens, we are well aware of what happened on that endpoint. So we know what data might have been there. We know what data might have been stolen. So another aspect of what we can deliver with some of our resilience offerings is not just the ability to re-image a device, but also the ability to get you a remote control that allows you to carry out forensics, and sort of image that device, snapshot the state before you re-image it, so that now I can look at what was on that device, what might have the attackers stolen, and also allow you to see what was on that device from a malware point of view, so you understand how the attack happened and therefore how you can better protect against it in the future. So the value of the data at the endpoint is another key component to that cost of the attack.
And I just wanted to ask you, because you're a technologist and of course have been around long enough to have an opinion on this. After AI worked, which other technology do you see that has a similar potential for destruction as well as for security? Playing both ways, so to speak.
Predicting the future, every year my PR team come along and ask me to do predictions for the following year, and every year I refuse to try and gaze into a crystal ball. We know that there are some disruptive technologies that are being developed. Quantum computing, if it ever works, could be quite disruptive for a lot of things. But I think that we're still quite a long way from that being a generally useful set of technologies. I think that I also think we ought to have a little bit of caution and skepticism about AI. People are seeing AI as being this radical new thing, which is changing everything. I actually just see it as another evolutionary step rather than, yes, it's a bigger change in terms of the sort of the speed of change than some that we've seen in the past. But I'm not sure that this is going to be a significantly more seismic shift than the internet becoming a mainstream concept. Prior to 1995, the vast majority of people were not on the internet. And by 2000, more or less everybody was on the internet. That was a very, very rapid shift in an awful lot of technology sectors. I think we're in another rapid shift. But can we really say that the world is a radically different place as a result of that? I think that clearly the way we do business has evolved, but it's very much evolutionary. And I think that we will continue to see these evolutions. I think we will continue to see them in fits and starts with plateaus and rapid growth. But I'm not going to put my neck out and say the next one will be, nuclear fusion or quantum computing or any of these other things that could change the world. I hope to see both of those. Nuclear fusion would be great. Quantum computing would be great. There's many others, but I'm not going to put my neck out and say which is next.
So we've heard quite often, and this is just an opinion, and I'm a non-technocrat, so I really should not be having this opinion. But quantum computing could pose some big challenges for security because we'll not be ready for it. But you see that, it's going to be a matter of course with the evolutionary trends, other things also going to develop, rise to meet the challenge and all of that.
Quantum computing has the opportunity to, if you can make it work and you can make it work reliably at scale, then has the opportunity to potentially crack certain types of cryptographic algorithm that we currently rely on. There's been a lot of research over the last 10 years to try to develop quantum-resistant algorithms. We're starting to see some standardization in that space. I've been around the cryptography space for long enough to be skeptical of any new algorithm until it's had a decade or more of analysis. But we're starting to reach the point where many of these algorithms have had a decade or two of analysis. And so we are starting to see these post-quantum cryptographic algorithms start to get standardized, and we're going to start to see those coming out in products. I expect the operating system vendors to start putting them into the operating systems by default. They're not without their challenges, but are we ready? I think that the academic community is ready. Whether the businesses are taking them up or not, the transition to remove all of these old algorithms from legacy systems and update all those legacy systems. And I think that there's going to be a huge amount of business in the consulting space and the sort of outsourced engineering space to try and work out how to transition those legacy systems. So all good stuff if you're in the IT industry.
Thank you so much, Nicko, for your time and for answering 2 questions out of the syllabus. But thanks.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.